You know what hurts the most? It's not the big betrayals. It's the small ones, the ones that chip away at you piece by piece until you wonder if you were ever really there at all. I'm Tom, 69 years old, spent 43 years fixing engines, 38 years married to Monica. Thought I knew what both those things meant. Last Tuesday, I came home from Dr. Peterson's office. Nothing serious, just the usual checkup that comes with getting older. Blood pressure, reflexes, the works. He told me I was in good shape for my age. "Keep active, Tom," he said. "Use those hands of yours." I walked into the garage like I had every day for the past 15 years since I retired. Muscle memory, you know. Reach for the light switch, expect to see my workbench, my tools laid out just the way I liked them. Wrenches, organized by size, screwdrivers in their rack. The socket set my crew gave me when I left Johnson's auto shop. The bench was empty, not just messy, empty, clean, like someone had taken an eraser to 40 years of my life. I stood there for maybe 2 minutes, thinking I was in the wrong garage, thinking maybe I was losing my mind. But there was my oil stain on the concrete. There was the crack in the wall where I'd backed into it with the Buick in '98. Monica's voice came from the kitchen door, matter of fact, like she was telling me we were out of milk. I sold them to Carol from next door, got $200. You weren't using them anyway. $200 for tools that cost me $3,000 over the years. Tools that had built half the neighborhood's decks, fixed countless neighbors' cars, taught my nephew Jimmy everything he knows about engines. I didn't say anything. What do you say? That those weren't just tools? That they were the only proof I had left that I used to be good at something? That my hands used to matter? Monica was already back in the kitchen talking to someone on the phone. I could hear her laughing about something. Light, carefree laughter. I went to my chair, the brown leather recliner I'd bought myself for my 60th birthday. It wasn't there either. "Where's my chair, Monica?" "Oh, that old thing? I donated it. The new one's much better for your back." The new one was beige, small, firm as a church pew. It faced the window instead of the TV. I sat down in it anyway, looked out at the garage, at the empty space where my workbench used to be. She sold my tools. I said nothing. But here's what she didn't know. 3 days later, she'd come home to find the garage was gone entirely, and I still wouldn't say a word. I woke up the next morning to the sound of furniture moving. Monica was in the living room, rearranging things. Again. She'd been doing this more and more lately, shifting chairs, moving lamps, reorganizing shelves like she was trying to solve some puzzle I couldn't see. "Morning," I said, walking to the kitchen. She didn't look up, just kept pushing the coffee table 3 inches to the left. My coffee mug wasn't in its usual spot by the machine. I opened the cabinet. It wasn't there either. Found it eventually, way up on the top shelf with the dishes we never used. The good china Monica's mother had given us. "Monica, why is my mug up there?" "I'm decluttering, making space for things that matter." Things that matter. I poured coffee into a different mug, some floral thing that felt wrong in my hands, and sat at the kitchen table, in what used to be my spot. Corner seat, back to the wall, where I could see both the TV and the front window. There was a placemat there now, decorative, covered my whole section of the table. "Could you move this? I need to set my coffee down." Monica glanced over like I was a child asking for something unreasonable. Just use the other side. The other side faced the blank wall. I moved to the other side. That's when I noticed the photos on the refrigerator had changed. Our wedding picture was gone. The one of me and Jimmy working on his first car, gone. The snapshot of me at my retirement party, surrounded by the guys from the shop, gone. What was left? Monica with her book club, Monica at her sister's birthday, Monica and our neighbor Carol at some restaurant I'd never been to, like I'd been edited out of our life. I was drinking my coffee, trying to understand what was happening, when Monica's phone rang. She answered it right there in the kitchen, not bothering to step away. "Oh, hi, Janet. Yes, I'm still coming to lunch today. No, Tom won't be joining us. He's not really social anymore, you know?" Exactly. Like having an old piece of furniture that you can't throw away but doesn't really match anything. She was looking right at me when she said it, smiling, like it was funny. I finished my coffee and put the mug in the dishwasher. Went to the living room to watch the morning news. My chair, the beige one that had replaced my recliner, had been moved. It now faced away from the TV toward the window. There was a decorative pillow on it that said, "Live, laugh, love." I moved the pillow, turned the chair back toward the TV, and sat down. Monica came in a few minutes later, saw what I'd done. Without a word, she moved the chair back to face the window, put the pillow back. "It looks better this way," she said. "More balanced." More balanced. Like I was throwing off the feng shui of my own living room. I went to the basement. At least down there, nothing had changed. My old magazines were still stacked on the workbench. My spare reading glasses were still on the shelf. The space heater I'd rigged up to keep warm while I worked was still plugged in. I spent the day down there reading old issues of Popular Mechanics, trying to remember what it felt like to fix things. When I came back upstairs for dinner, Monica was setting the table, one placemat, one plate, one glass. "Aren't you eating?" I asked. "I ate with the girls. There's a frozen dinner in the freezer if you want something." I heated up a Salisbury steak and ate it, standing at the counter. Monica was in the living room, watching some show about people buying houses, laughing at the TV like it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. Later, when I went to brush my teeth, my toothbrush was gone from the holder. Found it eventually in the medicine cabinet behind the cold medicine and Monica's vitamins, like it was something that needed to be hidden away. That night, lying in bed, I listened to Monica breathe beside me. Steady, peaceful, content, like someone who'd spent the day exactly as she'd wanted to. I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time she'd asked me about my day. The last time she'd seemed interested in anything I had to say. The last time she'd looked at me and seen something other than an inconvenience. But here's what Monica didn't know. While she was having lunch with Janet, talking about how I was like old furniture, I was in the basement, looking through files, finding papers. The garage deed was in my name, had been since 1987, and tomorrow I had an appointment with Frank Morrison, the lawyer who'd handled my retirement paperwork. She thought I was just taking up space. She was about to learn how much space I actually owned. Frank Morrison had been my lawyer for 20 years, handled the paperwork when I bought the house, when I refinanced it in '95, when I set up my retirement accounts. Good man, straight shooter. the kind who didn't waste time with small talk when you had business to discuss. His office hadn't changed much over the years. Same oak desk, same law books lined up on the shelves, same smell of old leather and coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Frank himself had gotten grayer, a little thicker around the middle, but his eyes were still sharp behind those wire-rimmed glasses. "Tom," he said, standing up when his secretary showed me in. "Good to see you, though I have to say, you sounded pretty serious on the phone yesterday." I sat down in the chair across from his desk, the same chair I'd sat in when we'd discussed my will 5 years ago, when Monica and I had decided how to divide everything up when one of us passed, back when I thought we were a team. "I need to ask you about the garage, Frank." He pulled out a thick folder from his filing cabinet, started flipping through pages. "The garage behind your house. What about it? Who owns it?" Frank looked up at me over his glasses. "You do, Tom. Has since you bought the property. Why?" I'd known that. Had to know it. But hearing him say it out loud made something settle in my chest, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. "What are my options with it?" "Options?" Frank leaned back in his chair. "Well, you can sell it, rent it out, tear it down if you want. It's your property. You can do whatever you like with it." He paused. "Is there a problem?" I told him about the tools, about Monica selling them without asking, about how she'd been rearranging things. Didn't go into all of it. Frank didn't need to hear about the coffee mug or the chair or the way she talked about me on the phone, just enough so he'd understand. Frank listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Tom, I've known you for 2 decades. You're not the kind of man who makes rash decisions. So I'm going to ask you straight. What do you want to do about the garage?" "I want to sell it." "To who?" I hadn't thought that far ahead. Just knew I wanted it gone. Wanted Monica to come home and see that I could make things disappear, too. "Anyone who'll buy it." Frank nodded slowly. "I can put together the paperwork. List it with a realtor who specializes in small properties. Garages, workshops, storage buildings. There's a market for that kind of thing, especially in your neighborhood. People need extra space." "How long would it take?" "If we price it right, maybe a week or 2. I know a guy who flips properties, buys small lots to expand his rental units. He might be interested." A week or 2. Monica would come home from one of her lunches with Janet or her book club meetings, and the garage would be gone. Just like my tools had been gone. Just like my chair, my coffee mug, my place at the table. What about the money? "Goes to you. It's your property." Frank leaned forward. "Tom, can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Does Monica know you're thinking about this?" "No." "Are you planning to tell her?" I thought about that, about Monica moving my chair to face the window, about her laughing on the phone, calling me old furniture, about the way she'd looked right at me when she said it. "No." Frank was quiet again. Then he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a legal pad. "All right then, let's get this started." We spent the next hour going through the details, property lines, zoning regulations, tax implications. Frank explained everything carefully, the way he always did. Made sure I understood what I was signing. When we were done, he walked me to the door. "Tom," he said, shaking my hand, "I'll call you when I hear something." I drove home slowly, taking the long way through town. past the high school where I used to volunteer for their automotive program, past Johnson's Auto Shop, where I'd worked for 23 years, past the diner where Monica and I used to have breakfast every Sunday morning, back when she still seemed happy to sit across from me. The garage looked different when I pulled into the driveway, not like the empty shell it had become after Monica sold my tools, like something temporary, something that wouldn't be there much longer. I went inside. Monica was in the living room watching television, some cooking show. She glanced up when I walked in. "Where were you?" "Had some errands to run." She turned back to the TV. "Dinner's in the fridge if you want it." I went to the kitchen, found a sandwich wrapped in plastic wrap. Ham and cheese. No note, no explanation. Like food for a boarder. I ate it standing at the counter, looking out the window at the garage. Tomorrow, Frank would start making calls. By next week, maybe sooner, someone would come look at it, make an offer, sign papers, and Monica would never see it coming. After dinner, I went down to the basement, sat in my old chair next to the workbench, surrounded by the magazines and spare parts and half-finished projects that Monica hadn't discovered yet, hadn't decided to sell or donate or throw away. I could hear her upstairs moving around. The television got louder. Some movie now, lots of music and shouting. Her laughter drifted down through the ceiling. She was having a good evening. I pulled out an old notebook I used to keep track of repairs. Started making a list. Not of things to fix. I didn't fix anything anymore, just a list of everything that was mine, everything I owned, everything I could control. The garage was just the beginning. I wrote for an hour, thinking about Frank's questions, about property lines and ownership, and who had the right to decide what stayed and what went. When I was done, I had 3 pages of notes, property deeds, bank accounts, insurance policies, a lifetime of documents that proved I wasn't just taking up space. I was still the owner of this house, still the one whose name was on the mortgage, the utilities, the title. Monica thought she was rearranging furniture. She was about to learn she'd been rearranging someone else's life. Поділитись. Export. Переписать ответ поиск. Frank called me on Thursday morning. "Tom, I've got good news. Remember that property investor I mentioned? Rick Castellano? He's interested in the garage. Wants to see it this afternoon if you're available." I was standing in the kitchen watching Monica water her plants on the windowsill. She'd bought new ones last week, replaced the herbs I used to grow there with something decorative, flowers that looked nice but served no purpose. What time? 2 o'clock work for you? Monica would be at her book club meeting. She went every Thursday from 1 to 4, discussing novels I'd never heard of with women who seemed to find her endless complaints about domestic life fascinating. That's perfect. Rick Castellano turned out to be a man about my age, maybe a few years younger. Drove up in a clean pickup truck wearing work boots that had actually seen work. The kind of man who understood the value of a solid foundation and good bones. He walked around the garage slowly, checking the electrical outlet, testing the overhead door, examining the concrete floor for cracks. Professional. Thorough. Built to last, he said, running his hand along the wall. They don't make them like this anymore. 1987, I told him. I helped pour that foundation myself. He nodded approvingly. What are you asking? Frank had researched comparable sales. Similar structures in the neighborhood had sold for anywhere from 8 to 12,000, depending on condition and size. My garage was on the higher end, bigger than most, better maintained, with updated electrical work I'd done myself 3 years ago. 10,000? Rick didn't hesitate. I'll take it. Just like that. 40 years of storing lawn mowers and Christmas decorations, of teaching neighborhood kids how to change oil, of having a place that was mine, reduced to a handshake and a check. I can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow, I said. Perfect. When can I take possession? I thought about Monica's schedule, her book club, her lunches with Janet, her weekly hair appointment on Saturday mornings. Monday work for you? Ideal. I'll bring a crew to dismantle it Tuesday morning. We'll have it cleared out by the end of the week. That evening, Monica came home with a new tablecloth, floral pattern, bright yellow and blue. She spread it across our kitchen table, covering the scratches and water stains that marked 30 years of shared meals. "What do you think?" she asked, stepping back to admire her work. "It's nice." She was already moving on, adjusting the salt and pepper shakers, repositioning the napkin holder, making everything match her vision of how things should look. I went to bed early that night, lay there listening to Monica talking on the phone with her sister in Denver, discussing plans for Christmas. Plans that seemed to involve a lot of I and not much we. Friday morning, Frank called again. "Everything's ready, Tom. Rick's bringing a cashier's check for 10,000. You just need to sign the deed transfer." $10,000. Not a fortune, but enough to open possibilities I hadn't considered in years. Enough to remind Monica and myself that I still had choices to make. I met Rick at Frank's office at 11. The paperwork took 20 minutes. Signatures, notarizations, official stamps that made it legal. When it was done, Rick handed me the check and shook my hand again. "Pleasure doing business with you, Tom." I deposited the check at First National on my way home, opened a new savings account just in my name. The first money I'd controlled independently since I retired. Monica was in the living room when I got back, rearranging the bookshelf. Again, moving my repair manuals and automotive magazines to the bottom shelf, replacing them with her romance novels and cooking magazines at eye level. "Find anything interesting in town?" she asked, not looking up from her work. "Just the usual errands." She nodded absently, focused on organizing books by height rather than subject, making everything look uniform, even if it made no practical sense. I spent the weekend watching her preparations for what she didn't know was coming. She bought new outdoor cushions for the patio furniture on Saturday, scheduled a lawn service to start weekly maintenance on Monday, mentioned to Janet over the phone that she was thinking about getting the driveway sealed, all improvements to property that was about to change dramatically. Monday morning, Monica left for the grocery store at 9:30. Her usual routine, shopping when the stores were less crowded, taking her time to compare prices and select the perfect produce. Rick arrived at 10 with his crew. 3 men with a truck full of tools and a small crane. Professional operation. They worked efficiently, disconnecting the electrical, removing the overhead door, taking apart the structure piece by piece. By noon, 40 years of my garage was loaded onto their truck. The concrete pad remained, clean, empty, marked only by the ghost lines where the walls had been attached. Rick had offered to break up the concrete too, but I'd told him to leave it. let Monica see exactly what had been taken away. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she came home at 12:30, groceries bags in both hands. She backed through the front door, talking over her shoulder to someone in the driveway. And I told her that yellow would clash with the shutters, but does she listen? No, she... The grocery bags hit the floor. I looked out the window. Monica was standing next to her car, staring at the empty concrete pad where her parking spot had been protected by the garage structure. Where she'd walked past my workbench every day for 15 years without seeing it as anything important. The new owner was there too, a young couple, maybe in their 30s. The woman had a measuring tape, planning where they'd put their storage shed. The man was taking pictures with his phone, documenting their new investment. Monica turned toward the house. Her face was pale, confused, like someone trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. She came through the front door slowly. "Tom?" I was still sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee from my regular mug. I'd retrieved it from the top shelf and put it back where it belonged. "Tom, where is the garage?" I set down my coffee cup carefully, looked at her directly for the first time in weeks. "I sold it." "You what?" "I sold the garage last Friday. The new owners took possession this morning." Monica sat down heavily in her chair, the one she'd positioned to face the living room instead of the window, back when she was rearranging everything to suit her taste. "You can't sell the garage. We need it for storage, for the lawn mower, for ... I pulled out the deed transfer from my shirt pocket, unfolded it on the table between us. "It was my garage, Monica. My name on the deed. I could sell it." She stared at the paper, like it was written in a foreign language. "But you didn't ask me. You didn't even tell me." I took another sip of coffee, let her words hang in the air for a moment. "Like you asked me before you sold my tools?" Her face went red. "That's different. Those were just old tools taking up space." And the garage was just an old building taking up space. Monica stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backward. "This is insane, Tom. You can't just sell parts of our property without discussing it. We're married. We make decisions together." I looked at the kitchen around us, at the new tablecloth, the rearranged cabinets, the coffee mug that had been banished to the top shelf, at the living room beyond, where my chair faced the window and my books had been moved to the bottom shelf. "Do we?" For the first time in months, Monica was really looking at me. Not past me, not through me, but at me. Her eyes were wide, frightened. "What is that supposed to mean?" I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug in the sink, put it back in its proper place next to the coffee maker. "It means the garage is gone, Monica, and there's nothing you can do about it." She followed me to the window. We both looked out at the empty concrete pad, at the young couple measuring and planning and making decisions about their new space. "The lawn mower is still in there," Monica said quietly. "My Christmas decorations, the patio furniture we put away for winter. I moved everything to the basement yesterday. It's all safe." She turned to look at me, really look at me, like she was seeing someone she'd never met before. "Who are you?" she whispered. I met her eyes, held her gaze for the first time in longer than I could remember. "I'm the man who owned the garage, Monica. The man whose tools you sold. The man whose chair you moved, whose place at the table you rearranged, whose existence you've been editing out of this house piece by piece." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "I'm also the man whose name is on the deed, to this house, on the mortgage, on the bank accounts, on everything you've been treating like your personal property." The color drained from her face completely. "Tom, I never meant—" "Yes, you did." I walked past her toward the basement door. "Where are you going?" "Downstairs, to my chair, to my magazines, to the part of this house you haven't redecorated yet." As I reached the basement door, I turned back to her. "The garage brought $10,000, by the way, cash, in an account with just my name on it." I left her standing there, staring out at the empty space where her sense of control used to be. The basement felt different now, not like a place I'd been banished to, but like a place I'd chosen. My space, my rules. I sat in my old chair and opened a magazine. Upstairs, I could hear Monica pacing, opening and closing cabinets, making phone calls. But for the first time in months, the sounds of her activity didn't feel like judgment. They felt like worry. And worry, I was beginning to understand, could be the beginning of respect. Otvet poisk. The next morning, I woke up before Monica for the first time in years. Usually, she was the early riser, up at 6, coffee made, already planning her day while I was still trying to remember what day it was. But that Tuesday morning, I was awake at 5:30, alert in a way I hadn't felt since my working days. I made coffee in my regular mug, sat at my place at the kitchen table, the corner seat I'd reclaimed the day before. Through the window, I could see the empty concrete pad where the garage used to be. In the early morning light, it looked clean, final, like a decision that couldn't be undone. Monica came downstairs at 7, moving carefully like someone walking on ice. Her hair was uncombed, her eyes puffy from what I suspected had been a sleepless night. She looked at me sitting in my usual spot, then at the coffee maker, where I'd left enough for her. "Good morning," I said. She poured herself coffee without answering, sat down across from me in what used to be her preferred seat before she'd started rearranging everything. We drank in silence for several minutes, both looking out at where the garage had been. "Tom," she finally said, "we need to talk." "About what?" "About yesterday, about everything." I set down my mug, waited. "I called Janet last night," she continued, "and my sister. They both said I should be furious with you. Said you had no right to sell the garage without telling me. What do you think?" Monica stared into her coffee. I think maybe I forgot something." "What's that?" "I forgot that you're still here." It was an odd thing to say, but I understood what she meant. Somewhere along the way, she'd started treating me like a ghost in my own house, present, but not really there, taking up space, but not contributing to it. "I'm still here," I agreed. "Are you angry with me?" It was a fair question. Was I angry? I'd felt a lot of things over the past few months, hurt, invisible, dismissed, forgotten. But sitting there in my kitchen, drinking coffee from my mug at my place at the table, anger wasn't what I felt. I was invisible, Monica, in my own house, to my own wife. I was disappearing, and you were helping it happen. She winced. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way." "But you did." She nodded slowly. "What do we do now?" I stood up, rinsed my mug, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "To town. I have some shopping to do." The hardware store hadn't changed much since I'd stopped going there regularly. Same smell of sawdust and metal, same cluttered aisles packed with everything a person might need to fix or build or maintain something worthwhile. Old Pete Matthews was still behind the counter, though he must have been pushing 80 by now. "Tom Henderson," he said when he saw me. "Haven't seen you in a while. How's retirement treating you?" "It's had its ups and downs." I walked through the store slowly, reacquainting myself with tools I used to know by heart. Wrenches and screwdrivers, socket sets and pliers. Not the expensive professional-grade equipment I'd lost when Monica sold my collection to Carol. Just basic tools, a starter set. But as I picked up a hammer, testing its weight, checking the balance, something settled in my chest. The same feeling I'd had when Frank confirmed I owned the garage. The feeling of things being where they belonged. I selected carefully. A basic toolbox, sturdy but not fancy. A set of screwdrivers, combination wrenches, a socket set, pliers and wire strippers, a level and a measuring tape. The essentials for a man who might want to fix things again. At the counter, Pete tallied up my purchases. Starting a new project? Something like that. The bill came to just under $300. I paid cash from the envelope in my pocket. Money from the garage sale, money that was mine to spend however I saw fit. "Need help getting this to your car?" Pete asked. "I can manage." But as I loaded the toolbox and bags into my trunk, I realized I wasn't sure where I was going to put them. The garage was gone. The basement was cluttered with the items I'd moved down there. Monica's Christmas decorations, the patio furniture, boxes of things we'd accumulated over the years. I drove home and carried my purchases down to the basement anyway, cleared a space on the old workbench, organizing the new tools in a neat row. It felt good to handle them, to arrange them properly, like putting on clothes that fit after wearing someone else's wardrobe for too long. Monica was in the kitchen when I came back upstairs, preparing lunch. She glanced at my empty hands. "What did you buy?" "Tools." She stopped cutting vegetables, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Oh. That afternoon, while Monica was at her hair appointment, I went down to the basement and started organizing. Not just the tools, but everything. Made space for the lawnmower in one corner, found a better spot for the Christmas decorations, created a workshop area around the old bench. It wasn't a garage, it wasn't a proper workshop, but it was mine. I was hanging up some hand tools on a pegboard when I heard footsteps on the basement stairs. Monica appeared, moving carefully on the wooden steps. "I brought you some coffee," she said, holding out a mug. My mug. "Thanks." She looked around the basement, at the organized space, the clean workbench, the tools arranged with military precision. "It looks nice down here. It's functional." Monica sat down on an old folding chair I'd set up nearby. We hadn't spent time together in the basement since the early years of our marriage, when we talked about finishing it someday, making it into a family room. "Tom, can I ask you something?" I continued arranging tools. "Sure." "When did I stop seeing you?" It was the kind of question that deserved a thoughtful answer. I set down the wrench I was holding and leaned against the workbench. "I think it was gradual, like watching someone get old. You don't notice it day by day, but one morning you wake up and they're different." "But when did it start?" I thought about that. Maybe when I retired. I went from being Tom the mechanic to just Tom, who's around the house all day. And maybe I let that happen. Maybe I started disappearing before you started not seeing me." Monica was quiet for a long moment. "I used to be proud of you, you know. When you'd fix Mrs. Patterson's car for free or help the Kellys with their fence, I used to tell people, 'My husband can fix anything.' I remember. When did I stop being proud? I don't know. When did I stop giving you reasons to be proud?" She looked around the basement workshop I'd created. "What's this, then?" I picked up a screwdriver, testing its grip. "This is me remembering who I used to be." That evening, Monica made dinner for both of us, set the table with 2 place settings, 2 napkins, 2 glasses. We ate together for the first time in weeks, talking about small things, the weather, the neighbors, a movie she wanted to watch. It wasn't the easy conversation we used to have, but it wasn't the silence we'd fallen into either. It was something new, careful, like 2 people learning to share space again. After dinner, I went back to the basement, not because I was hiding or because I'd been banished, but because I had work to do. I'd noticed that the basement window had a loose frame, the kind of problem I used to fix immediately, but had been ignoring for months. It took me an hour to tighten the frame, adjust the weather stripping, make sure it sealed properly. Simple work, but satisfying in a way I'd forgotten about. When I came back upstairs, Monica was reading in the living room, in her chair, the one she'd chosen and positioned where she wanted it. But my chair was back where it belonged too, facing the TV at the right angle to see both the screen and the front window. "How did it go?" she asked, looking up from her book. "It's fixed." She smiled, a small smile, but real. "Good." I sat in my chair and picked up a magazine. For the first time in months, we shared the same room without tension, without her rearranging things or me feeling like I was in the way. We were just 2 people living in the same house, both of us where we belonged. Later that night, lying in bed, Monica spoke into the darkness. "Tom? Yeah? I'm sorry about your tools, the ones I sold to Carol." "I know. And I'm sorry about making you feel invisible." "I know that too." She was quiet for a moment. "Are we going to be okay?" I thought about the question, about the garage that was gone, the tools I'd replaced, the space I'd reclaimed, about the way she'd brought me coffee that afternoon, and the way we'd eaten dinner together like 2 people who still cared about each other. "I think so," I said, "but things are going to be different." "Different how?" "I'm not going to disappear anymore, and you're not going to make me." "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The next morning, I woke up before Monica again, made coffee for both of us, set out 2 mugs. When she came downstairs, I was sitting in my place at the table, reading the newspaper I'd retrieved from the front porch. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning." She poured her coffee and sat down across from me. Normal, natural, like 2 people who knew how to share a kitchen table. Outside the window, the empty concrete pad caught the morning sun. Still empty, still final. But somehow it looked less like a loss and more like a foundation, a place where something new could be built, if we decided it was worth building. I stood at the basement window Friday morning, watching my grandson Timmy kick his way through the fallen leaves in our backyard. 8 years old, all knees and elbows and endless energy. He'd been staying with us for the week, while his parents dealt with some crisis I didn't fully understand. Something about his father's job and a move that might or might not happen. Monica had been fussing over him all week, making his favorite foods, setting up the guest room with extra blankets, worrying about whether he was warm enough, happy enough, comfortable enough. It was good to see her focused on something that mattered, someone who needed her attention. I'd been keeping my distance, not wanting to get in the way. Timmy was polite when he spoke to me. Yes, sir, and no, sir, and thank you, Grandpa. But there was a carefulness there that reminded me of how I'd felt in my own house just a few weeks ago, like he wasn't sure where he fit. That morning, though, something was different. Timmy wasn't playing in the yard. He was standing on the empty concrete pad where the garage used to be, staring at the space like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I went upstairs and found Monica in the kitchen packing Timmy's lunch for the day camp she'd enrolled him in. "He's been asking about the garage," she said without looking up. "Wants to know where it went." "What did you tell him?" "That Grandpa sold it, but he keeps asking why." I looked out the kitchen window. Timmy had found a stick and was poking at the cracks in the concrete, exploring the outline where the walls used to be attached. Maybe I should talk to him. Monica stopped folding the brown paper bag. "You don't have to do that, Tom. I can handle it." "I know I don't have to." She looked at me then, the same careful look she'd been giving me since the garage disappeared, like she was still learning how to see me again. "Okay," she said quietly, "if you want to." I went outside and walked across the yard to where Timmy was conducting his investigation. He looked up when he heard my footsteps on the concrete. "Hi, Grandpa." "Hi, buddy. What are you looking at?" "This used to be a garage, right? Grandma said you sold it." "That's right." "But why? Where do you keep your car now?" I looked around the yard. My car was parked in the driveway, same as always. The garage had been for storage, not parking. But explaining that would mean explaining about the tools, about Monica, about things an 8-year-old shouldn't have to understand. "I didn't need it anymore," I said. Timmy poked at a bolt hole with his stick. "What did you keep in there?" "Tools, mostly. Equipment for fixing things." "What kind of things?" I sat down on the concrete pad next to him, my old knees protesting the movement. "Cars, mostly. Lawn mowers, bicycles, anything with an engine that stopped working." Timmy's eyes lit up. "You fixed cars?" "For 40 years. Real cars, like engines and stuff?" I nodded. "Engines, transmissions, brakes, electrical systems. If it was broken, I could probably fix it." Timmy dropped his stick and turned to face me fully. "Could you fix my bike?" "What's wrong with your bike?" "The chain keeps falling off. Dad said he'd fix it, but he's been too busy with work stuff." I thought about my new tools in the basement. Basic equipment, nothing fancy, but probably sufficient for a bicycle chain that needed adjustment. I might be able to take a look at it. "Really?" "Sure. Where is it?" Timmy jumped up and ran toward the garage, toward where the garage used to be. Stopped short when he remembered it wasn't there anymore. "It's in Grandma's car," he said, deflating slightly. "We can get it out." Monica was loading the dishwasher when we came back inside, Timmy chattering about his bike and whether I could really fix it. She looked up as we passed through the kitchen. "Where are you two going?" "Grandpa's going to fix my bike," Timmy announced. Monica glanced at me. "Are you sure?" "You don't have to." "I want to." She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. The bike's in the trunk of my car. Keys are on the counter. We retrieved the bike, a red BMX-style bike that had seen better days, and carried it down to the basement. Timmy looked around with wide eyes at the organized workspace I'd created. Whoa! Is this where you fix things now? It's where I'm going to fix things. I flipped the bike upside down and examined the chain. Simple problem. The rear derailleur needed adjustment, and the chain was stretched enough that it was slipping off the smallest gear. Nothing I couldn't handle with basic tools. Can you hand me that screwdriver? I asked, pointing to the pegboard. Timmy studied the tools hanging there with the seriousness of a surgeon selecting instruments. This one? That's the one. He handed it to me carefully, watching as I adjusted the derailleur tension. How do you know which tool to use? Practice, and making a lot of mistakes when I was learning. Were you always good at fixing things? I thought about that while I worked on the chain tension. When I started, I broke more things than I fixed, but I kept trying, and eventually I got better. Who taught you? My father, mostly, and then other mechanics when I started working. You learn by watching, asking questions, trying things yourself. Timmy was quiet for a few minutes, watching me work. Then, Grandpa? Yeah? Could you teach me? I looked up from the bike. Timmy was standing next to the workbench, running his finger along the edge of the pegboard where the tools hung in neat rows. Teach you what? How to fix things, like you do. Something shifted in my chest, a feeling I hadn't experienced in months, maybe years. The feeling of being needed for something that mattered. You really want to learn? Yeah, I want to be able to fix my own bike, and maybe other things too. I set down the screwdriver and looked at my grandson. Really looked at him. Saw the curiosity in his eyes, the eagerness to understand how things worked. The same expression I probably had at his age, watching my own father work on the farm equipment that kept our family fed. It takes patience, I said, and you have to be willing to make mistakes. I'm good at making mistakes. I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. In that case, you'll be a natural. I spent the next hour showing Timmy how the bike's chain and gear system worked, not just fixing the immediate problem, but explaining why it had happened, how to prevent it, what to look for when something was going wrong. He asked good questions, listened carefully, didn't try to rush ahead or grab tools without asking. When I let him hold the bike steady while I made final adjustments, he focused completely on the task. There, I said, flipping the bike right side up. Want to test it? We carried the bike upstairs and outside. Timmy climbed on and pedaled around the driveway, shifting through the gears, testing the chain tension. No slipping, no skipping, smooth operation. It works perfect, he called out, riding in circles around the empty concrete pad. Thanks, Grandpa. Monica came outside to watch, carrying a glass of iced tea for me. How did it go? He's a natural, I said, accepting the glass gratefully. Really? Asks the right questions, pays attention, doesn't try to rush through things. We watched Timmy ride figure eights around the yard, testing his repaired bike with the thoroughness of a quality control inspector. Tom, Monica said quietly, he's been different since you started working on the bike. More, I don't know, confident. I knew what she meant. There was something about understanding how things worked, about being able to fix problems with your own hands, that changed how a person moved through the world. I'd felt it myself at Timmy's age, the first time I'd successfully repaired something my father had given up on. "He reminds me of myself at that age," I said. "What were you like?" "Curious, always taking things apart to see how they worked, driving my mother crazy because I'd fix one thing and break two others in the process." Monica smiled. "Some things never change." That evening, after Timmy had gone to bed, I found a note on my workbench, written in careful 8-year-old handwriting. "Thank you for fixing my bike, Grandpa. Can you teach me more things? From Timmy." I folded the note and put it in my shirt pocket. The next morning, Timmy was waiting for me in the kitchen when I came down for coffee. "Grandpa, my friend Jake said his skateboard has a loose wheel. Could we fix that too?" Monica looked up from her newspaper. "Timmy, don't pester your grandfather. He doesn't have to fix everyone's—" "It's fine," I interrupted. "If Jake wants to bring his skateboard over, we can take a look at it." By the end of the week, word had spread through the neighborhood's network of 8-year-olds. Timmy's bike was running perfectly, Jake's skateboard was no longer wobbling, and there was a line of minor repair projects waiting in my basement workshop. Nothing major. Loose handlebars, squeaky brakes, a scooter that wouldn't fold properly. Kid problems that adults were too busy to address, but that mattered enormously to their young owners. I found myself looking forward to these small challenges. Each repair was a puzzle to solve, a problem that had a definite solution if you took the time to understand it properly. But more than that, I was teaching again, showing Timmy and his friends how to hold tools correctly, how to think through problems systematically, how to take pride in work done well. "You're different," Monica observed one evening, watching me clean and organize tools after a day of repairs. "Different how?" "Happier. Like you have a purpose again." I thought about that while I hung up the last wrench. Maybe I do. Sunday morning, Timmy's parents came to pick him up. His father looked tired, stressed by whatever work crisis had consumed his week. His mother seemed relieved to have the child care logistics resolved. "How was he?" she asked Monica. "I hope he wasn't too much trouble." "He was wonderful," Monica assured her. "Tom taught him some mechanical skills. He's been helping with bike repairs all week." Timmy's father looked at me with mild surprise. "Really? That's great. Timmy's always been interested in how things work." "He's got good instincts," I said. "Natural problem solver." As they loaded Timmy's belongings into their car, he ran back to me. "Grandpa, when I come visit again, can we work on more stuff?" "Absolutely. And you'll keep teaching me?" I knelt down to his level, feeling my old knees protest, but not caring. "As long as you want to learn." He hugged me then, a quick, fierce 8-year-old hug that somehow contained more genuine affection than I'd felt in months. After they drove away, Monica and I sat on the front porch, watching the empty street. The concrete pad where the garage used to be was visible from our chairs, no longer a reminder of loss, but simply part of the landscape. "He's going to remember this week," Monica said. "I hope so. Not just the bike repair, the time you spent with him, the way you made him feel capable." I thought about my own grandfather, who died when I was 12. Remembered the patient way he'd shown me how to use a hand plane, how to read wood grain, how to measure twice and cut once. Lessons that had stayed with me for 60 years. Maybe that's what being a grandfather is, I said. Passing on what you know while there's still time. Monica reached over and took my hand. You're a good grandfather, Tom. I'm a good mechanic. The grandfather part, I'm still figuring out. That evening, I went down to the basement and looked around my workshop. Tools organized and ready. Workbench clear and functional. Space for teaching, for learning, for solving problems that mattered to people who mattered to me. The garage was gone, but something better had taken its place. Not just a workspace, but a purpose. Not just tools, but a reason to use them. I picked up Timmy's note from my shirt pocket and pinned it to the pegboard next to my tools. A reminder of what I'd rediscovered that week. That being useful wasn't about having the biggest workshop or the most expensive equipment. It was about having knowledge worth sharing and someone willing to learn. It was about remembering that your hands could still build something meaningful, even if what they built was confidence in an 8-year-old boy who thought his grandfather could fix anything. Maybe I couldn't fix everything, but I could fix enough. And sometimes enough was everything.